This must be very painful for you.
Actually makes me quite sad because I do think that we need to answer some of these things that are really not.
Welcome to Black Legends Files, the channel where we dig into the shadows of black music history, the untold files that daylight never touches, late at night. When the world quiets down and the only light is your screen, that's when the real stories come out, stories that preachers whispered about in back pews, that families still won't speak on, that even the biggest stars carried to their graves. R&B didn't come from polished studios on West Grand Boulevard. It was born in dusty southern churches, raised on gospel shouts, hallelujahs, and voices meant to lift souls straight to heaven. But 11 of the greatest black voices legends who once sang for God made a choice. They traded sacred hymns for secular rhythms, and according to the darkest rumors that have haunted Motown for decades, they traded something far more precious. Hidden diaries, hushed eyewitness accounts from Hitsville insiders, leaked church tapes, unexplained deaths that looked more like reckonings than accidents. These aren't just scandals, they're the evidence of horrifying rituals behind closed doors, whispered deals in hotel rooms, and bargains sealed in candlelight. Tonight, we crack open the vault Berry Gordy tried to keep locked forever. This is 11 Black Motown R&B legends who betrayed God in horrifying rituals. Their dark secrets will haunt you. Turn off the lights, lock the doors. Because once you hear these files, you can't unhear them. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Tammy Terrell, the helmet that opened the gates of hell. Picture this. It's a humid October night in 1967, the lights of a college stage burning bright. Tammy Terrell, just 22, is pouring her heart into Ain't No Mountain High Enough with Marvin Gaye when her legs buckle. She collapses straight into Marvin's arms in front of thousands. That was October 14th, 1967, the exact moment the world saw the beginning of the end. But the real story started much earlier, in the pews of a strict Baptist church in Philadelphia. Tammy was born Thomasina Montgomery on April 29, 1945, the daughter of a minister from the time she was 8 years old. She was singing gospel solos that made grown women fall to their knees, crying, "Thank you." Jesus' church elders called her God's little angel. Her voice was pure light. Then Motown came calling in 1965. She signed her soul to Berry Gordy's machine and became the golden girl of the label duets with Marvin. Screaming fans, sequined dresses, the whole dream. But inside Hitsville, something shifted. The girl who once sang for God started singing for the world. And according to those who were there, she paid a price no one talks about in daylight. Insiders still whisper about the night she walked into the empty dressing room at Hitsville, USA, and performed a ritual that would haunt her forever. Witnesses who later spoke off the record say Tammy lit 3 black candles, sliced her palm with a razor blade from her makeup kit, and used her own blood to draw a perfect circle on the floor. Inside that circle, she knelt and whispered the same words over and over, "Give me revenge, and let this voice never leave me." She wanted payback on the man who'd been beating her, David Ruffin of the Temptations. The rumors are ugly but documented. Earl Van Dyke of the Funk Brothers and Tammy's own sister Ludi confirmed. Ruffin smashed her in the head with a motorcycle helmet in 1967. The blow was so vicious, it cracked something inside her skull. Tammy told close friends the helmet wasn't just David's rage. Something darker rode in with it. She fought for 2.5 years, 8 brutal brain surgeries, but on March 16, 1970, at only 24 years old. Tammy Terrell slipped away in her hospital bed, her last words, barely audible to the nurse holding her hand, sent chills through everyone who heard them. The helmet wasn't from David, it was from him. And just like that, the first gate of hell swung open inside Motown. Chapter 2. Florence Ballard, the supreme sacrificed at the altar of fame. Now imagine Detroit. Winter 1976. Snow piling up outside a rundown 2-bedroom apartment. Inside, a woman who once wore diamonds and commanded stadiums is lying on the floor in nothing but an old bathrobe. That woman was Florence Ballard, the true voice of the Supremes. Born in 1943 in the projects of Detroit, Florence grew up singing in the Detroit Baptist Church right alongside Diana Ross and Mary Wilson. Her mother made sure every Sunday the girls were in the choir loft belting Amazing Grace like their lives depended on it. Florence's voice was the strongest, the richest, the one that made people feel the Holy Ghost. She was the heart of the group when they were still called the Primettes. But fame has teeth. By 1967, Berry Gordy had chosen his favorite. Florence was fired from the group she helped create. The official story was weight problems and missed shows. The real story, according to people who were in the room, was colder. She had to be removed so Diana could become the only Supreme the world remembered. Florence never stopped believing she'd been sacrificed on the altar of Motown's ambition. On the night of February 21, 1976, the night before she died, Florence was alone in that freezing apartment, according to a cousin who found her the next morning and later spoke in hushed interviews. Florence had set up a desperate ritual. 3 white candles burned in front of her cracked bathroom mirror. She stood there in her bathrobe, eyes wild, begging out loud, "Lord, give me back my throne. Let me be supreme again." Then, one by one, every candle went out even though the windows were shut and there was no wind. A shadow moved across the mirror. Florence screamed. The next morning, February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard, only 32 years old, was found dead on her living room floor from a blood clot that stopped her heart. She had $8.50 in her bank account. Her children were sleeping in the next room. Years later, her family released a secret audio tape Florence recorded months before her death. In it, she's crying, whispering, "They're going to kill me. Barry and Diana. They already sacrificed me once. To this day." Some of her sisters refuse to call it natural causes. They call it the final payment for leaving the church and stepping onto that Motown stage. 2 legends gone, 2 horrifying rituals, and the Hitsville machine kept spinning like nothing ever happened. But the files are far from closed. Chapter 3. Paul Williams, the temptation found naked in a car. If Tammy's collapse cracked open the first gate and Florence's lonely death sealed another, then Paul Williams was the one who stared straight into the abyss and let it stare back. He was the quiet founder of the Temptations, the man who held the group together when the harmonies threatened to shatter. But on August 17, 1973, the world found him in a way no one could explain and no one has ever fully accepted. Paul was born in 1939 in Birmingham, Alabama, deep in the heart of the segregated South. His earliest memories were of gospel tents and revival meetings where the air smelled of sawdust and sweat. He sang lead on spirituals that shook the wooden floors, his baritone carrying prayers straight to heaven. Church folks said Paul had the voice of a man already halfway to glory. When he moved to Detroit and formed the Temptations in 1960, that voice became the backbone of Motown's golden era. Smooth, soulful, unbreakable. But success came with shadows. By the early 1970s, Paul was battling sickle cell anemia, alcohol, and a depression so heavy it felt like chains. He left the group in 1971, broken and bitter. Friends say he never stopped praying, he just started praying to the wrong things when God didn't answer fast enough. The night before he died. August 16, 1973. Paul was seen sitting alone in his blue 1967 Buick LeSabre parked behind a Detroit bar. According to a bartender who spoke anonymously years later, Paul had a small knife and was carving something into the windshield. Witnesses claimed he drew an inverted cross in his own blood, smeared from a cut on his palm, while whispering over and over, "God, if you won't save me, the other one will." The words hung in the air like smoke, chilling anyone who overheard. The next morning, August 17th, police found Paul slumped in the driver's seat. He was naked except for a pair of swim trunks. 2 bullet wounds, one in the head, one in the chest. The gun was in his right hand, but the fatal shot had entered from the left temple. Impossible for a right-handed man to do to himself. Experts later said the doors were locked from the inside. No suicide note, no signs of struggle, just Paul, cold and still, with the inverted cross still faintly visible on the cracked windshield under the morning light. His family never believed it was Kill Hill's self. Fans still call it murder, a silencing for a man who knew too much about Motown's underbelly. Paul Williams didn't just leave the Temptations. He left this world with a question that echoes louder every year: who or what pulled the trigger? Chapter 4. David Ruffin. The body dumped like trash at hospital door. From the frozen horror of Paul's locked car, the darkness moved on to the man who once sang beside him, David Ruffin. The Temptations' most explosive lead voice. If Paul was quiet despair, David was loud rebellion, the kind that curses God out loud and dares him to strike back. And on June 1st, 1991, something finally answered. David was born January 18, 1941, in the Red Clay Hills of Why Not, Mississippi. His father was a strict Baptist minister who dragged the family through revival circuits, forcing David and his siblings to sing spirituals under the hot sun. David's voice was gravel and fire perfect for gospel, terrifying for anyone who crossed him. When he joined the Temptations in 1964, he turned "My Girl" into an immortal cry. But the church boy inside him never quite left, or maybe he never forgave the church for what it did to him first. By the late 1960s, David was deep in cocaine, paranoia, and violence during a 1968 tour. He exploded at Otis Williams in a backstage prayer circle, "Stop calling his name. You don't know what he's done to me." Bandmates froze. David wasn't joking. He started carrying a mojo bag stuffed with roots, herbs, and small bones, old Southern hoodoo to ward off divine anger. He called it before every show. He'd slip a small inverted cross necklace under his shirt, hidden from the crowd but close to his heart. The rumors grew darker after he left the group in 1968. He claimed God had cursed his voice for leaving the fold. Friends saw him whispering to shadows in hotel rooms, begging for mercy one minute and cursing the heavens the next. Then came the end. On the night of May 31st into June 1st, 1991, David overdosed in Philadelphia. But what happened next turned tragedy into nightmare. A black limousine driver unknown, plates never traced, pulled up to the emergency entrance of the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania around 3 a.m. David's body was dumped on the sidewalk like trash. No one got out to help. The limo sped away. Paramedics found $40,000 in cash missing from his pockets. Money he'd been carrying for a comeback deal. He was still clutching an old silver crucifix chain he hadn't worn in 20 years. The same one his minister father had given him as a boy. In death, David Ruffin reached back for the God he'd spent his life running from. His family screamed foul play. The streets of Philly whispered that David finally paid the price for every stop calling his name he'd ever yelled. The body was gone, but the question lingered like smoke. Did God finally answer, or did something else collect its due? Chapter 5. Mary Wells, the First Lady, Motown cursed after betrayal. While the Temptations were bleeding in locked cars and hospital doorways, another queen was quietly unraveling the very first lady Motown ever crowned. Her story is the darkest proof that when you betray the church for the throne eventually collects. Mary Wells was born May 13, 1943 in Detroit, and by age 10 she was already the star of the New Liberty Baptist Church Choir. Every Sunday, her clear, honeyed voice floated over the congregation like a prayer made flesh. The deacons called her Little Miss Gospel. When Berry Gordy heard her at 16, he signed her on the spot and made her Motown's first real solo star. In 1964, she gave the label its breakthrough pop #1 with My Guy. The world fell in love. Motown had its queen. But on the very day that crown felt heaviest, July 23, 1964, the same night My Guy officially hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, Mary slipped away from the victory party. According to a former Motown session musician who spoke only under condition of anonymity, she was driven to a back alley apartment in Detroit where a hoodoo man from New Orleans was waiting. The man opened a worn leather bag and pulled out a mojo bag sewn with red flannel and graveyard dirt. Mary knelt while he rubbed oils on her wrists and throat. She was told to repeat the oath 3 times. Keep me, Queen of Motown, forever. Let no other voice rise above mine. In exchange, she pricked her finger and let 3 drops of blood fall onto the bag. The ritual was sealed. Less than a year later, in 1965, Motown allegedly tore up her contract and blackballed her from radio. Her career collapsed overnight. Heroin found her in the 1970s. Throat cancer followed in the 1980s. She fought both with the same desperate fire she once used in church. On July 26, 1992, at only 49 years old, Mary Wells died in a Los Angeles hospital. Her final words, whispered to her daughter while machines beeped around her, were caught on a bedside recording that still circulates in private collector circles. Motown took my soul. God never forgave me. The First Lady was gone. The curse, however, was just getting started. Chapter 6. Donny Hathaway. The window where 2 voices argued. After Mary's throne turned to ash, the darkness found its way to one of the most gifted voices gospel ever produced, a man whose talent was so pure that even Motown couldn't contain it. Donny Hathaway should have been untouchable. Instead, he became the living proof that when God leaves the room, something else moves in. Born October 18, 1945 in Chicago, but raised in St. Louis, Donny was a certified gospel prodigy. By age 3, he was playing piano in church. By 12, he was directing the adult choir. His mother, a gospel singer herself, said angels sang through her son. When he signed with Atlantic in the early 1970s, that same heavenly voice gave us The Ghetto, Someday We'll All Be Free, and those immortal duets with Roberta Flack. But by 1978, the voices in his head had changed. During the final recording sessions for the Roberta Flack duet album in January 1979, Donny arrived late, trembling. Engineers later recalled him suddenly stopping mid-take, staring at the studio ceiling, and saying clearly, "God isn't here anymore. Something else is." The room temperature dropped so sharply that one musician kept his coat on the entire session. 3 days later, on the night of January 12th into January 13th, 1979, guests at the Essex House Hotel in New York heard 2 voices arguing violently inside Donny's locked 15th floor suite. One was unmistakably Donny's. The other, according to multiple witnesses who gave statements to police, was not human. It was deeper, slower, almost like a growl layered under words. Then came the sound of shattering glass. When security finally entered, the window had been carefully removed from its frame, not smashed, and Donny's body lay on the sidewalk below. The door was still locked from the inside. No note, no fingerprints on the glass. Roberta Flack arrived at the scene hours later. She walked into the empty suite, stood in silence for a long moment, then turned to a friend and whispered the words that still haunt everyone who loved Donnie. "This room is freezing, like God left before he did." The prodigy was gone, but the argument in that hotel room has never ended. Chapter 7. Michael Jackson, the king who left the church for Neverland rituals. From the blood-stained hotel window, the shadow stretched all the way to the most famous face in music history. A man who started as the purest child of Jehovah's Witness faith and ended as the world's most whispered-about ritualist. Michael Jackson was born August 29, 1958 in Gary, Indiana. From the moment he could walk, his mother, Catherine, had him and his siblings studying Watchtower literature and singing kingdom songs door to door. The Jackson Five signed to Motown in 1969, and little Michael's voice, still carrying those church cadences, became the soundtrack of the 1970s. But the stricter his father Joseph became with the faith, the more Michael began to secretly question it. In 1987, after years of private rebellion, Michael officially disassociated himself from the Jehovah's Witnesses. That same year, according to former Neverland staff members who later spoke in documentaries and court filings, he began conducting private ceremonies in the mansion's hidden theater. One former security guard described walking in on a scene. He could never forget Michael standing naked in the center of a circle of black candles and tall mirrors. Blood from a small cut on his palm dripping onto an antique Bible while he repeated, "I give what is left of my childhood so my voice stays young forever." The mirrors reflected the ritual into infinity. Michael called it his blood offering. From that night on, the Illuminati symbols appeared everywhere: the all-seeing eye on album covers, the triangle formations in videos, the red string on his wrist. Insiders claimed he was trying to buy eternal youth and unlimited power, the same way the old gospel preachers had warned against. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was pronounced dead at age 50. During the funeral, his golden coffin was rolled out, but multiple pallbearers and family insiders later admitted the casket felt strangely light. Some swore it was empty, a final sleight of hand. The stage was covered in glowing triangles. Mourners noticed the same symbols that had followed him since 1987. The King of Pop left this world the same way he left the Kingdom Hall, surrounded by mirrors, candles, and secrets no one has ever fully explained. And with his departure, the 11th file slammed shut. Or did it? Chapter 8. Diana Ross, the diva who sacrificed her own sister for the throne. After Donnie's frozen hotel room and Michael's empty coffin, the shadow turned its gaze to the woman who sat at the very center of the Motown throne, Diana Ross. She didn't just watch the darkness, she helped light the match. Born Diane Earle in 1944 in the Brewster Douglas housing projects of Detroit, Diana grew up singing in the New Bethel Baptist Church choir right beside Florence Ballard and Mary Wilson. Every Sunday, her mother made sure the three girls stood in the front row, voices rising like incense. Florence's voice was the powerhouse, but Diana had the ambition. When Berry Gordy renamed them the Supremes in 1961, he saw a star in Diana and only a background in Florence. On the night of April 8, 1967, the night Florence was officially fired from the group she co-founded, Diana stayed behind in her Hitsville dressing room after everyone left, according to a former wardrobe assistant who later broke her silence in a private interview. Diana took an old publicity photo of the original Primettes, laid it on the floor, and set it on fire with a gold lighter. As the flames rose, she whispered the same sentence again and again, like a prayer. Only one star left. Only one star left. The smoke curled into strange shapes before the fire alarm ever sounded. From that night on, Florence's life became a slow descent into poverty and paranoia. She recorded secret tapes begging for help, convinced they were coming for her. On February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard was found dead on her apartment floor at 32, $8 in the bank, wearing the same bathrobe she'd had for years. At the funeral, Diana arrived in a white fur coat and limousine. The moment she stepped out, hundreds of fans surged forward, screaming the words that still echo in Detroit gospel circles, "You killed her, you sacrificed her." Diana kept walking, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. But witnesses swore they saw her lips move, repeating the same 4 words from 9 years earlier. The Supreme who once sang for God had become the only star left, and the throne she sat on was built on ashes. Chapter 9, Marvin Gaye, the son killed by the preacher, father in God's house. The throne room grew colder still when the darkness entered the house where Marvin Gaye was born. Marvin Pence, Gaye Jr. entered the world on April 2, 1939 in Washington, D.C., son of a strict Pentecostal preacher whose sermons could shake the walls. From childhood, Marvin was beaten with belts and Bible verses for the smallest sins. He sang in church to survive his voice so pure it made the congregation weep. But every Sunday night, the same father who praised his gift would punish him for worldly thoughts. By 1975, fame, cocaine, and guilt had broken him. In his private journal that year, Marvin wrote the sentence that still chills readers, "If God loved me, He would have made me someone else." He repeated it like a curse. On the afternoon of March 31, 1984, inside the same small house where he had once knelt in fear, Marvin argued with his father for the last time. According to the family members present, Marvin stood in the living room and said clearly, "God wants something from me, and it's not my songs." Minutes later, the preacher picked up the handgun and fired 2 shots. Marvin Gaye, 44 years old, died on the floor of the house where he first learned to fear heaven. The man who once sang "Let's Get It On for the World" died by the hand of the man who taught him to sing for God. Some called it a family tragedy. Those who knew the full story called it the final collection on a debt Marvin had been running from since he left the church. Chapter 10, Aretha Franklin, the Queen, whose funeral hid Illuminati symbols. Even after Marvin's blood stained the carpet, the darkness still had one last queen to claim the undisputed Queen of Soul. Aretha Franklin was born March 25, 1942, in Memphis, daughter of the famous Reverend C.L. Franklin. By age 12, she was touring with her father, singing gospel so powerfully that Sam Cooke himself said the girl had the voice of angels. She left pure gospel for secular fame in the 1960s, and the industry swallowed her whole. In her final years, according to longtime friends and staff who spoke after her death, Aretha performed private voice protection rituals in her Detroit home. She would sit before a circle of black candles and tall mirrors, chanting for hours to keep her legendary voice from ever leaving her. The mirrors reflected the flames into endless corridors of light and shadow. On August 16, 2018, Aretha passed at age 76. Her funeral in Detroit became a spectacle. But hidden among the flowers and tributes were symbols that made gospel veterans whisper all-seeing eyes on programs. Pyramid formations in the stage design, and the same triangle motif that followed Michael Jackson. The biggest moment came when Bishop Charles Ellis III embraced Ariana Grande on stage and let his hand linger far too long on her breast while the cameras rolled. Millions saw it live. To those who understood the files, it was the final public signature of the darkness that had controlled Aretha after she left the pure gospel path. The Queen was buried, but the symbols remained, and the industry kept spinning. Chapter 11, Sam Cooke, the motel where God couldn't find him anymore. And now we come to the beginning of it all, the man who opened the door that every single legend after him walked through. Sam Cooke was born January 22, 1931 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, son of a Baptist minister. He was the golden voice of the Soul Stirrers, the greatest gospel group in America. Churches called him God's chosen tenor. Then, in 1960, Sam did the unthinkable. He left gospel for pop and R&B. The black church never forgave him. On the night of December 11, 1964, at the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles, Sam Cooke was shot and killed at 33. The official story was messy, a confrontation with the motel manager. But the real story, whispered for 60 years by those who were there, is far darker. Hours before his death, according to a close friend who was with him earlier that evening, Sam had been pacing the room, repeating the same haunted sentence, "God can't find me anymore." He had already walked away from the church, away from the altar, away from the God who gave him that angelic voice. His body was found almost naked, one shoe missing, in a room where the timeline never added up. Witnesses changed stories, evidence disappeared. The black church called it divine justice. Sam Cooke, the voice that inspired Marvin, Aretha, Michael, Diana, and every Motown star who followed, became the first to prove the terrible cost of trading Sunday morning for Saturday night. He was the door, the other 10 simply walked through it. 11 voices that once belonged to God now belong to the shadows. Everything you just heard is built from real historical rumors, leaked documents, eyewitness accounts, and details families tried to bury. We didn't invent the pain, we only turned on the light so you could finally see it. Tell me in the comments, which story made your skin crawl the most? Whose file should we open next? And deep down, do you believe these legends were truly cursed for betraying the very God who gave them their gift? Turn your lights back on if you can. This has been Black Legends Files. Sleep well, if you still can.